Welcome to Staplegrove, 108 New London Road, home to the Chelmsford Club. Originally built in 1840s, it was known in those days as a Laurel Grove and was part of the overall development of New London Road, masterminded by a local solicitor by the name of Copeland. Copeland and four of his business colleagues put together what was known as the Chelmsford Company for the acquisition and development of the whole of New London Road. One of those businessmen was actually Fenton, who was the designer and the first inhabitant of this building. If we look back, we can see the original gatehouse, and on the other side we can see a rather quaint Victorian pavilion. Now, the development of this building benefited from the various owners, and they were Fenton. We're unsure who Fenton actually sold it to, but it was then the May family, the Gray family, the Parish family, and then in 1938 negotiations started with the Chelmsford Club, and on August the 15th, 1939, the Chelmsford Club moved in. As we move along there, you'll see a plaque on the wall with a prominent M. That depicts the May family, and they were responsible for that part of the development. What we'll now do is we'll go through and I'll show you some of the other side of the building, which were the coach house and the stables. As we can see here, we've got the coach house with the wide doors in the front there and at the side. We can then move round here to the stables and the hayloft above it. If you look even further up, you will see a sign, a plaque that says 1875. That was the era of the May family, so they would have been responsible for all of this. What we don't know is why this particular wall has got a curve in it. We can assume at the time there would have been kitchens there and washrooms, but we don't know why that particular architecture required it to be curved. This area here, in the 70s, there were a pair of squash courts, but as the interest in squash diminished, we demolished those, sold them off, and this Mews cottage was built. Somewhere in the car park, there is a stoke hole and two forging pits for the blacksmith to be able to service, obviously, the horses and the carriages in the day. Over to the distance, we will be able to see some bells. The original plot was 4.5 acres, so it goes from those bells all the way around to the views over there on the right hand side. What we'll do, we'll go into the building, back into the building now, and what I'll do is I'll use the 1924 sales catalogue to get a very clearer view of the grandeur of the building. Because in that catalogue it was advertised as a fine Victorian mansion of 9 bedrooms in 4.5 acres. So in the grounds there would have been a Victorian fountain, ornamental pond, lots of gardens and 2 lawn tennis courts. As this is a fine Victorian mansion, we are blessed internally with some beautiful Victorian finishes, and as we come through the vestibule and then the arched inner hall into the heart of the building here, and we have this lovely iron staircase. We understand that the ironwork was founded locally, as were the bricks and the white stucco rock, but as you look up you can see the lantern and it floods natural light down into this hallway. We'll now go through into the formal dining room. Now, into the formal dining room, behind those walls there would have been a very large country kitchen. So all the food would have been prepared in there. It then comes through into the crockery room where it's plated up, and the staff would then take it through into here and serve what would have been some very magnificent meals. We still benefit from this lovely original fireplace here, but what we'll do now is we'll go through into what was the library and reading room. This room was the library and reading room, and in its day would have benefited from the lovely views of the gardens. Sadly, we have a wall there now because in the 1950s this was compulsory purchase by Essex County Council, and about 3 acres was taken. So the wall now represents the boundary, whereas the bells way behind it was the original boundary, the 4.5 acres. Obviously now we are in the heart of the Chelmsford Club, which of course is the bar. In its day would have been an elegant drawing room, and just at the back there was the doorway from what was a waiting room into this main room here. Now, Fenton's original building would have ended here. So this part would have been an addition, which is a small conservatory, And the room over here was a purpose-built snooker room, and you will see that there is some terracing around the outside that was put in there for spectators. Now obviously no snooker table in there, and it's used as a very, very good multi-purpose room for the club. What I now need to do is to clear up an error. Now, we were told that Fenton was a non-conformist, which means that non-conformists found it quite difficult to practice their religion the way they would like to. So Fenton, being a wealthy architect, designed and built his own chapel. So the story goes. And we are told that Fenton would have come through in here. The congregation would have come through this door here, because the other side of that door are some wide steps to enable them to do so. They would then cleanse their hands in the secret sink, be seated, and the various religious ceremonies would take place. And so that story was told, we believe, for decades, until one of our guests came and said, I have found some interesting research material about this room. And so, to cut a very long story short, if you look at the diagram, you'll see that it's the planning diagrams for a purpose-built billiard room in 1897. It never was designed by Fenton, never was a chapel, and in fact, when it was built, Fenton had already been dead for over 20 years. In fact, Fenton is buried in that non-conformist graveyard, but by a very cruel twist of fate, the first person to be interred in that cemetery was in fact Fenton's own son, Lionel. This would have been one of the smaller bedrooms. Interesting point, of course, is the fireplace, as in its day, all of the building would have been coal-fired heating. So this would have been a smaller bedroom. There's a much larger bedroom where you can see that we've got now hot desking in there, because most of the upstairs within the Chelmsford Club these days is dedicated to business. What we then have is the master bedroom, and the small room on the side was the boudoir. It is now the committee's office, but there are some simple and very interesting features in there, like the curved doors on the side there by the window, and in one of those is a small safe, obviously for jewellery. The two doors that you can see going to the other part of the building was part of the development to protect the building. If you don't look after buildings, as everyone knows, of this size and this age, they deteriorate very rapidly. So a significant amount of investment was raised. That half of the building was turned into 3 apartments. So on the one hand, it saved the building. On the other, it provided revenue for the Chelmsford Club. Now we're more concerned with trying to develop up and modernise the building while still keeping the heritage that we enjoy. In the 1924 sales catalogue, it advertised a strong room with a Hobbs and Hart plate safe. This being the strong room, but Hobbs was an American safe salesman and engineer. And they came over in the 1850s to the Great Exhibition to obviously exhibit their products. The 2 main competitors at that exhibition were Chubb and Brahma. So Hobbs did whatever he needed to do to minimise the threat from Chubb, but Brahma is the oldest security company in London. And they had for 60 years in their shop an advert saying, if anybody could break the Brahma lock, there's a 200 guinea prize. Hobbs, with a considerable amount of work and effort, managed to achieve that and broke the lock, to the great discomfort, of course, to Brahma, but they had to pay. So he managed to get himself world fame, a pot of gold to start up his own business, got some commissions from the Bank of England, sold up and went back to America. That's the story of the Hobbs and Hart plate safe. Right, one of the final things to talk about now are the cellars. So I've already explained the extent of the building. The cellars cover the entire footprint of the building. It's something like 8 different rooms with wine cellars and beer cellars. Also included a dark room, which we are assuming was for photography. So to give a sense of scale, in 1939, the Ministry of Defence designated our cellars as an air raid shelter for 150 people. As I've explained to you, this is the home of the Chelmsford Club. Chelmsford Club is the oldest club of its type in Chelmsford, starting in 1884. First premises were at the top end of New London Road, in Museum Terrace. We then went to 14 London Road, and as I explained earlier, moved in here in 1939. We have approaching 200 members. It's an annual membership. You can have individual membership, couples and corporates. As you've already seen, there is a mix of social activity and the business hub upstairs. Should anyone need any more information or get contact with us, please get onto the website or any of the contact details at the bottom. Thank you very much.